Hello and welcome to the latest webinar in our series for the International Education and Schools Fair. And our topic for today is International Education and Schools in the Netherlands, a Relocation Guide. And I have with me here today Annebet van Mameren, who is the founder of New2NL. She's an independent education consultant specializing in education issues and helps families, international families, moving into the Netherlands. And also with me here today is Pauline, Director Operations and Sales. She's the head of the Relocation Department of the Expatriate Management Group in Amsterdam. So welcome to you both. Lovely to have you here.
Thank you, Fiona.
Thank you.
So I think we'll make the assumption that people don't know very much about what's going on and maybe coming from anywhere around the world, considering moving to the Netherlands. So perhaps we could start off by you telling us a little bit about what your organisation does and what part you play in the relocation jigsaw. And then after that, we can perhaps go through some of the locations that people might be moving to and why. So Annabet, would you like to start off, please?
Yes, thank you for having me. So I'm a specialist in education in the Netherlands, and I help international families find a school. And I ask the schools if they have availability, because that's often an issue. And I make appointments for them, which is also difficult because of COVID, you cannot see the schools from the inside now. So I really try to make it as much as possible so that they can choose the schools that they like.
Excellent. And a very valuable service. And Pauline, can you explain how you can assist people?
Yeah, so I work for the Expat Management Group. We are based in Amsterdam and in Brussels. We have an immigration department, a relocation department, and we have a close cooperation in-house with a tax company. So we assist from the start before leaving for the Netherlands with the entire immigration procedures, the highly skilled migrants and the intercompany transfers. We arrange all the permits, and then we assist also with the income tax applications, but also the ruling. And then finally, the department that I work in is the relocation department, all the practical things that need to be arranged when you move to another country, to the housing, working together with Annabet for schooling, settling in, all kinds of things that might need to be arranged.
Great. So almost everything you need to know. So one of the first things people would like to consider are the locations they might be going to. So from your experience, Annabet, what are the most popular cities and areas that most of the international families moving to the Netherlands move to?
Yeah, a lot of families, they move to Amsterdam. And especially when parents are working in sectors like banking, finance, IT, creative industry. So that's a lot based in Amsterdam or just around it. The Hague is where the government is, and the embassies and a lot of NGOs. So it really depends on the work place of the parents. And Rotterdam, for example, that's where the harbor is. So a lot of facilities, companies that work with the harbor, they are located in Rotterdam.
All right, great.
So those are the most popular places, yeah.
And you would agree with that, Pauline, or are there any further?
Yeah, I agree. I think most is concentrated around the cities that Annabet is mentioning. It's called the Randstad in the Netherlands. It's the economic center of the country. We also see a lot of companies, particularly IT companies, going south around the area of Eindhoven. That's where all the technical companies usually are based. But the Netherlands is quite concentrated also because of the international schools, which are in certain locations. But you see a lot of remote areas in the Netherlands where people probably won't go to. So it's quite easy to find the locations where you will have more internationals living.
But very easy to get around once you're there. Great. So we've had very unusual circumstances with the COVID pandemic over the last year. So hopefully things are improving and the vaccines freeing up movement, etc. But let's just sort of recap for people who may not know what the situation is. What are you finding at the moment are the biggest challenges? So Annabet, on the education and school side.
I think the biggest challenge for parents who want to move to the Netherlands is that they cannot visit the schools. And so they have no idea. They have to choose the school based on an online meeting with the principal or some videos. They cannot really get a feel for the school. They cannot just visit here and then make their decision. So it's all a bit abstract for them. And that makes it really a challenge sometimes. Right. And then when the child starts school, then the parents are not allowed to enter the building. So they have to say goodbye at the fence. And it's difficult to start your new life in a new country in this way.
Yeah, right. Okay, and we'll go into how you do the admissions process in a moment. So thank you. Pauline, what are you finding most challenging, or your clients finding most challenging at the moment?
Yeah, so one big challenge is that they're not moving to the country that they were expecting at the moment, because everything is closed. So the restaurants are closed. Actually starting today, we have limited shopping possibilities. You can enter a shop for 10 minutes for 2 hours with two people for 10 minutes. And then the next one is on turn, but most things are closed. The gyms are closed, so it's a challenge for people who arrive here to kind of build up their social life. Most people are working from home, so it's an exception if you can go to the office. So people won't be able to meet personally with their new colleagues and need to work from home. This gives us an extra challenge to give extra assistance to kind of help setting up social contacts. So we developed extra services for that we do checkup calls. We make sure that people get the informal information that you usually would get from colleagues, that we make sure that we cover that area as well. The last thing I want to mention is that it's hard to find a property from the start, because after arrival, one needs to go in quarantine for 10 days. And during those 10 days, you can't have viewings to look for your property. So it's also a solution that we found is that we offer the home search via video viewings to show properties via video viewing. And then they hopefully can make a decision and go straight into their homes after the start. Otherwise, they need to go in temporary accommodation. They're stuck there. They're not allowed to leave the property. They can't leave the property in the first period. So, of course, there are more challenges, but I think these are pretty tough ones already. So we all the time creatively find solutions to kind of make it happen from the start, but they can't do it the old way at the moment.
But of course, one of the challenges always for people is, which ever since relocation started, is the compatibility of the location with the school. And is it schools first? Is it location first? So that's an old one. So over to you then, Annabet. So I think we're assuming that finding the school is the correct way round. Would you agree with that, Pauline? We get the school sorted out first?
Yeah, actually, it is on this topic, but I personally, my opinion, if people go for an international school, then definitely that's the case. Then the school is the most important thing. If they are not too selective about a Dutch school, then probably they could go start looking for houses first, because then there might be more options for Dutch schools in the area.
Really, it is the choice between locations and which comes first, but what type of school. So again, I'm sure there are a number of choices, and that was also partly, I was reading up on your website full of information and your YouTubes, etc. But you divide the country into different regions, don't you? And that affects the admissions dates and everything.
Yeah, I think what you're referring to is that the Netherlands is indeed divided in 3 different regions, so North, Central and South. And they go on vacation 1 week after the other during the summer and some other vacations during the year as well. And that is to prevent too much traffic all at once and blocking all the streets and everything. The admission dates, that really depends on the school. So there's not one particular deadline or something for a specific region. And so when you want to apply for a school, you should ask if they have indeed an application period and if there's a deadline. And most schools you can start any time of the year if you want to. It also depends on your child's age, of course. And some other schools have very strict application periods.
So what about the choice between a Dutch education or an international education or other options? Can you run through those, please?
Yeah, that depends on a couple of different factors. So one is the age of the child. So for children who are still young, so 4 or 5 or younger, they usually pick up the Dutch language pretty quickly. So for them, it could make sense to send them to a Dutch school. But when they're already older, so usually around 10 or older, then it becomes a bit more difficult to learn Dutch and really become fluent to go to a good secondary school. So in that case, maybe international school would be better. And then it also depends on how long you're planning on staying in the Netherlands, which is often a very difficult question because a lot of parents don't know yet. But if you are almost sure you will only be for 1 or 2 years in the Netherlands, maybe international school is better. But when you're planning on staying for a longer time, then it could make a lot of sense to send a child to a local Dutch school. And then you really become part of the neighborhood. Children from the same neighborhood go usually to the same school. And then you integrate more into the Dutch society. So yeah, it depends on a lot of different things. And another important factor to consider is your budget for education, because the Dutch schools are practically free. They only ask for a parent contribution that's usually less than 100 euros per year and a few extra costs. But the international schools, they are much more expensive. And then there are 2 types of international schools. There are subsidized schools. They are subsidized by the Dutch government. And then the fees are around 5,000 euros per year per child. But they are officially only intended for families who are temporarily in the Netherlands, so for whom there's no alternative to go to a Dutch school. But in reality, once you're in, so they will not kick you out if you end up staying longer. And then there are also the private international schools, and they are much more expensive. And a lot of children who go there, their parents, they get the school fees refunded by their company. So they don't have to pay themselves, because that starts with about 16,000 euros per year, which, yeah, cannot everyone afford, of course. But then the private international schools, they usually have more facilities and after-school activities and, yeah, things that subsidized schools don't offer. But then they encourage the children to take part in sports clubs and music school and other activities in the community. So it also depends on the parents, what they want to give to their children, what kind of experience. So more stay in international world, or more, locally Dutch and then become part of the neighborhood. So there's no good or bad option. It really depends on the family and their wishes and needs and budget. And so it's a very personal decision, and that's what I advise them on and help them to take that decision.
And the language bilingualism or other languages, multicultural.
There are also French schools, German schools, Indonesian, Japanese, and European schools where they teach multiple languages. So that could be an option as well, especially for families who come from one of those countries. And usually those schools also get subsidized by the government of the country they belong to. And there are indeed a few bilingual schools. So usually they teach in English and Dutch. but you should see them as Dutch schools where part of the curriculum is taught in English, but all the tests are in Dutch. So they are more an advantage for Dutch children who want to learn English early rather than the other way around.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So usually I don't advise them to families who speak only English at home, because then all Dutch has to come from school. And when only half of the time they're teaching in Dutch, then does the child really learn Dutch enough to go to a good secondary school? So
yeah, okay. So how do you find it, Pauline, your families? Do they pretty soon adapt to the language issues, or is that something that concerns them, families coming over?
To learn Dutch, you mean?
Yes, or is that for people moving here to work, is that an issue or not really, and do people get language support?
Yeah, I think initially that most people will start with language courses. The problem is the Dutch, they always want to reply in English. So it's really hard for a foreign person to practice Dutch, because we think it's polite to reply in English. So that person really should say, please allow me to practice some Dutch and don't reply in English. So that is something, and because that happens, because most people in the Netherlands, they are pretty comfortable in speaking English. I think that a lot of people who only stay here for a few years might not get to the level of Dutch that they initially planned to do. I also think socially that most people who enter the country, they kind of often socialize a little bit more with people from their own nationality than with the Dutch, and it's not that they might mix also with the Dutch, but then probably the conversation will be in English very quickly again. And I think the disadvantage of the Netherlands, we're the only ones who speak Dutch in the world. So yeah, some islands in the Caribbean, but it doesn't make sense maybe to put too much effort in it, because once you leave the Netherlands again, you're probably not going to use it again. So that's very understandable.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would recommend it though, because as long as you don't speak the language, you always are isolated from the community. You know, you won't be able to hear what people are saying around you. It is so much nicer if you make the effort and become part of the society by speaking the language.
Yes.
Yeah.
And of course, the schools are very good at helping families to transition the children and the families nowadays, and you're part of a wider community. And what do families need to have ready, Annabet, if they're making the move? Are there certain documents or records or details what are required generally for the admissions?
Yeah, that again depends on what type of school you are choosing for. Usually the application, the way of applying for the Dutch schools is pretty straightforward. Some people think that they need to wait until they have an address in the Netherlands, but that is not true. So you can contact the schools and ask if they have availability, and if yes, then they will write your name, and then it's okay. They might ask for school reports, but that's more to have an idea of the child. So what are they good at? What do they need help with? What kind of child is it? So the teacher can connect with them. But the international schools, that's more formal procedure. So they also need the school reports and translate it into English if needed. And they often need a passport of the parents and a recommendation letter from the current school the child is attending. But it also varies per international school. So you should always look very carefully through the requirements so you understand how it works.
Right. And what are some of the international schools can you name a few and where they are to give people an idea?
Yeah, there are two British schools in the Netherlands. One is located in Amsterdam and the other one in The Hague. And in Amsterdam, there's also ISA, that's International School of Amsterdam. They teach the IB, the International Baccalaureate curriculum. Then there's also a smaller school in Amstelveen, they're called Amity. They're pretty new still. They also teach IB. Then there is a French school, and from next September, they're going to open a bilingual French-English school. So maybe that's interesting as well. And you don't need to speak French or English to enroll there. So, but if you want to learn the other language, of course. And then there's also a Japanese school in Amsterdam. And in The Hague, there's a lot of different types of schools. So a lot of different languages and a European school. Another European school is in Bergen, which is north of Amsterdam. So a lot of children whose parents work for a European institution, they work there, or they go to school there. And and in Eindhoven, there are some options. They are both subsidized, and then in Utrecht, Haarlem, and some other places, there are also subsidized international schools. So, like Pauline said, a lot are centered in the Randstad area, so in the west, but also outside of that area, there are some international schools.
And boarding options if people are traveling around a lot?
There's one international boarding school. It's in the northeast of the country. And boarding is not really a thing in the Netherlands, so there's only very few options.
But I suppose for families that are moving around Europe or in and out traveling, it might be.
Yeah, then
yeah,
it's in the town is called Eerde, and that's where they go to. And
brilliant.
It's something we're not really used to in the Netherlands, boarding schools. Not like the UK. It's yeah.
It's actually today in the news was that one of our princesses, she's going to a boarding school in Wales.
Yeah.
And that was big news because that never happened. So
yeah,
that's good. Oh well, perhaps it'll catch on then. So what about very small children, early years? What sort of age do children start school, and or do they go to early nurseries? How easy is that to find nursery or preschool places?
Yeah, a lot of things in the Netherlands are arranged differently compared to many other countries. So most children, they start school the day after their 4th birthday. So they start throughout the year. So if you arrive in the Netherlands in March, then your child can start school in March. And so you don't have to wait until the beginning of the new school year. And the children are obliged to go to school from age 5. So the first year is pretty flexible, and now you can take your child out of school if you want to, but from age 5, the Dutch school attendance law is very strict. And before age 4, the children can go to daycare or preschool. Preschool starts at age 2, or in some places at 2.5. So also that depends on where you live. And preschool is preparation for primary school. And usually that is about 16 hours per week. So it also depends on the work schedule of the parents, if that works or not. And daycare is for children from 0 to 4. And then you can choose how many days per week you need. So a lot of parents work part-time in the Netherlands, so it doesn't happen too often that the children go 5 days to daycare. But yeah, they can, of course, if that's what needed. And then there's also after-school care, and that is when the school is closed, then the children can go to the after-school care. They pick up the children from the school. Usually that's arranged externally in a different building run by a different organization. So you have to arrange that separately. You have to pay for that separately. And when the school is closed during the vacations or for teacher training day, then the after-school care is open as well.
Right, so pretty family friendly. I think that's what you have a reputation for, leading the way in family friendliness. Do you find that, Pauline, that most people are happy as a family? Yes, that there's. Now, I think you've got some hot news for us on immigration. So that is an area that can cause difficulty for families moving, and you have specialist immigration companies within your organisation, a department within your organisation. So how are things at the moment with regards to visas and immigration issues?
Yeah, so for the longer term, so if people want to move to the Netherlands for a period longer than 3 months, the government is not having any real restrictions or putting a delay to their arrival. So the applications go as normal. So the highly skilled migrants and the intercompany transfers, we can assist them in a normal way. And the thing is that there are obviously some flight bans at the moment. So there are some countries that it's hard to enter the country because of the flight ban. But the permit is then not the issue. For example, people from the United States, as a tourist, they are not allowed to come. But if they come here for work, they are just free to enter the country as long as there is no flight ban. Actually, tomorrow we will have new regulations for the flight ban. So whatever I tell you today might not be applicable anymore tomorrow. So that is something we check all the time, of course, inside our company, what the latest regulations are, who can enter the country, who cannot, what are the restrictions. Luckily, worldwide, most embassies are open again as well. So if people need to apply for special permits to enter the country or get legalizations on their birth certificates, but it's also partly done by the embassies, they're also okay. So in that regard, it's fine to arrive the country. Obviously, you need to have the PCR test before arriving the Netherlands, and it needs to be taken 72 hours before entering the country. Then they need to do a rapid test just before getting into the plane again. And then after arrival, as I said in the beginning of our meeting here, that there's a 10-day quarantine period. They can do a test after 5 days, and if the test result is negative, then it's okay as well. But originally the test or the period is 10 days. So immigration-wise, permits are not the problem at the moment. It's more the borders if people can enter the country. And within Europe, it's easier. Of course, we have all the orange code countries. So you need to respect the quarantine codes, but you can travel if you like. And then, especially by car, it's also a different story, or by train compared to flying. So there are variations in that.
Good. Well, that's good to know. And then what about property, which is obviously an issue? You talked about showing people videos of properties, etc. But what do people tend to go for, furnished, unfurnished? And also, what's the situation regarding if people want to bring over their household goods?
Yeah, well, we see most young people that arrive, they usually rent something fully furnished. Especially if they stay for like 1 or 2 years. I mean, if you come on a local contract here, then it's different. Then they probably will bring furniture or buy furniture here. We also have some excellent furniture lease companies, so they can do furniture rental. So that's a very good option too. But yeah, young people, single people, couples, there's a lot of furnished rental. For families, usually we are searching for unfurnished properties, because most families, especially with children, they want to bring in their own atmosphere in the house, which means bringing their own furniture. So the moving companies are pretty busy, actually, I must say, in the Netherlands, because families are coming and they bring all their furniture. And the availability of housing is fine. It's not like that it's, I mean, it became better due to COVID because some people left, but especially family houses. We are, for example, we're looking now in an area close to Amsterdam, and it's still pretty tough to find a place. So it's not like there's a lot of properties available, but it's doable. And before last year, there are more possibilities to negotiate about prices, and there are more properties to choose from. Additionally, I would like to mention that a lot of temporary accommodation providers, because what I described with the quarantine periods, some people, they kind of skip the whole temporary accommodation now because they move straight into permanent accommodation with, for example, if we help them, we have this app on their phone, they look for the properties and then do the viewings via video viewings, and they go straight in the permanent accommodation. they skip temporary. So temporary accommodation providers, they decided to rent out their properties now for longer periods as well. So that increased the number of apartments, studios, and that type of properties.
Right. So there is availability. And what notice period do you ideally like? How far ahead do you like people to plan?
To come to inform us when they come to the Netherlands. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that all very much depends on if they're EU members or non-EU. So if we have to go through the immigration procedure, and we, of course, we start already with checking if the employment contract meets all the requirements that is necessary to get the right permits. So in a perfect world, we would like to know from the moment they sign a contract if the salary, for example, is matching with the requirements in the Netherlands to be able to get the permit. And then usually we need about, let's say, 2 months probably to get the permits done, but that's a rough one. I'm not the immigration expert, but I would say that would be okay. And 3 months before would be even better. For relocation, we can move very quickly. So it's entirely an issue of permits that needs more time.
Okay. And Annabet, what sort of notice do you ideally like when you're helping to support a family move and find school places?
Yeah, that is very difficult because a lot of international schools, they have a waiting list. And yeah, if you want to apply for those schools and you will be coming in 2 months, then it's very unlikely you will get a place there. But sometimes the schools can offer a place during the year and not in the beginning of the new school year. So if you're coming pretty soon now, then they might be able to offer a place. Yeah. So then you skip part of the waiting list. So, yeah. And for the Dutch schools, yeah, it doesn't really matter usually. And when children are 6 or older and they want to go to Dutch school, they first have to go to newcomer class. That's like a Dutch immersion class. And there it also doesn't matter if you start throughout the year. So yeah, a lot depends on what type of school you're looking for and if that school has a waiting list or if they're full.
Yeah.
It also depends. So if you only, for example, want a Montessori school and you already have an address, yeah, maybe that Montessori school is full. So yeah, then you either have to wait or you choose another school instead. So yeah.
Yeah. Can I ask Annabet a question, Fiona?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, just because in the past, usually we were saying to people, if you sign up or register before the 1st of April, usually that is advisable because after 1st of April, the international schools probably will be fully booked for the next school year. Is that still the case at the moment? Do you feel like that as well?
Yeah, it's not a rule, but it is that around April that the schools are asking their current parents, are you planning on staying or will you leave? So then they will have a better idea, yeah. But yeah, I've also placed clients in June and they could still enter the school. So yeah, but when you are on the list before the 1st of April, then it's more clear from the beginning how they can place you or not.
Okay.
All right. So I think now it would be great to have a bit of insight from you both about the wonderful lifestyle that you can find if you come to the Netherlands and from the different cities, because I'm sure people are dying to get there if they've been waiting for a while. But in your experience, what is it that makes the Netherlands such a good place to come and live and work and find a school place? So who would like to start with that one? Oh,
I love to start. Yeah, I love my country, our country. I think the Netherlands is a very easy country to live in. I think we're, any culture should feel comfortable in our country. What I like about the Netherlands is a central location in Europe. It's very easy to travel from the Netherlands. So you can do skiing in winter. You can even drive to Switzerland and Austria. You can have some amazing holidays from here. So explore Europe. And I think Europe the entire Europe has a lot to offer culturally, especially for people coming from Asia or people coming from South America. I think it's a really fascinating continent to live in, and the Netherlands is an easy place. It's a very regulated life. I mean, there's not much unexpected in the Netherlands, so you need to figure out what the rules are. Sometimes it can be a little bit annoying, probably, that everything is very strict the way it's organized, but at the same time, it's very reliable. So once you got used to this, then a lot of people will appreciate it, the reliability of how the system works in the Netherlands and how everything is taken care of. I think we have a lot of nice entertainment, but this is then hopefully very soon open again. We hope by the end of the summer. Yeah, we're all counting a little bit on by the end of the summer. We have beautiful beaches, for example. The sea is not very clear, but we have fantastic beach clubs where you can have nice dinners in the evening, and then you're only half an hour away from Amsterdam. Beautiful countryside, a lot of cycling. Obviously, we love to cycle, and there's a lot of outdoor activities. So I think it's a comfortable, safe place with good infrastructure, good internet, so easily to work also remotely from your office. It's reliable, and usually a very friendly, happy place for a couple of years.
Great.
I can be a tourist guide as well, can't I?
Well, people are queuing up to ask you tips.
May I add something to that?
Yeah.
So a couple of times UNICEF has announced the Netherlands as the best place to raise children. And some reasons are that it's very family friendly. And the children, they have a lot of freedom. So when they are about 10 or something, they can go by themselves by bike. So they are very independent. They usually the children are asked for their opinion. So they really make part of the household. They can express their wishes and needs. And yeah, like Pauline said, it's very safe overall. The crime rate is pretty low. There are some better and not so good areas, but in general, it is a safe place to raise your family. And education is basically free. A lot of activities for children are subsidized, and families with a low income, they get a lot of subsidies to also be able to send their children to those activities. So still they get the full experience, and even if the parents cannot pay for it. So I think that's very important as well, to really develop all your talents and become a good person.
And I think you offer some services as well, don't you, to support people once they've been there? Sort of, yes. Do you want to just say a little bit about that?
Yeah, as part of finding the best school for the family, I also ask, okay, what are your child's interests and what kind of activities do they like? And then I give them some suggestions for sports clubs and music school. And there are so many activities, some also in English. And in the beginning can be a bit difficult for the parents to navigate all the possibilities. So I help them with that. And also things like summer camps and things to do during the summer vacation and some other vacations as well, and some social activities to meet other expats or people who speak their language or something. So they feel at home pretty quickly.
Brilliant, thank you. And no doubt you have settling in services as well, Pauline.
Yeah, absolutely. We so besides finding the property, obviously, but we also have the area orientation tours to make sure that people are very quickly adjusted to their new living environment. So we give the local tips and tricks, what to find nearby, because we work with our field consultants who always have the really local knowledge to give good ideas. And we have I think what is quite handy, we have a very great network, a big network with other service providers as well. So whatever we probably won't deliver ourselves, like the language trainings or the cross-cultural trainings, or so whatever, we make fast connections to fill up all those services. But we make sure from the start till, after 3 months after arrival, that everything is arranged and hopefully working properly.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you very much. Really informative conversations with you both. Lots of information there. And of course, everyone can get in touch with you direct. There's lots of information on both your websites.
Yes.
So thank you very much, and please keep in touch and updated. And you would, of course, both be delighted to receive any inquiries, and we'll forward them on to you. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Fiona. It was wonderful to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Yeah.
So we've been delighted to speak today to Annabet from U2NL, the Education Consultancy, and also from Pauline Sun from Expat Management Group in Amsterdam. So do get in touch with them to find out more, and you'll find their details here and plenty of information on their websites. So you can enjoy playback of this webinar, but also in the recent webinars we've had this season has been the COVID-19, the changing future of the International School of Brussels, the benefits of bilingual education for children and the opportunities for life. And there is also going to be a focus on international education and schools in Thailand, international schools embracing change, admissions and communication perspective will give you a real insight into all things that you need to know about admissions. And of course, international education and schools, the Netherlands, is available as a replay. So in addition, there are plenty of playbacks of webinars earlier in the series in the autumn. So please do dip in and enjoy those resources. Don't forget the Relocate Awards are coming up soon with the closing date on the 21st of March. We are a multimedia and have plenty of education and schools information on our website, as well as information about global mobility, international assignments and resources. So please do dip into our daily news and website. So thank you very much for attending this webinar, and please get in touch with suggestions for what else you would like to hear about. Thank you for joining us.